Hi everyone, I'm Michelle. Welcome back to my channel. In our previous video, we learned about linear regression with one variable and the gradient descent. Today, we're going to connect the dots and see how these two work together. Specifically, we will explore how gradient descent helps linear regression find the minimum of the cost function. So alright, enough introduction, let's get started. First of all, before we jump into the details, let's quickly review what we have learned so far. The very first thing we learned is gradient descent. This is the iterative process where we continuously update the parameter value until they converge to the optimal ones. The second one is the linear regression. For now, we are looking at the simplest version, linear regression with one variable. The hypothesis function is h of x equals to theta of 0 plus theta of 1 multiple x. And the cost function is g of theta. We know from earlier that gradient descent helps us to find the points where the slope is 0. Put simply, it adjusts the parameter values theta to minimize the j of theta, leading us to a local optimal value. In the context of our linear regression model, the goal is to reduce the value of the cost function as much as possible, and this is where gradient descent becomes a perfect tool. It allows us to optimize g of theta systematically. Now let's zoom in on where gradient descent fits into the linear regression. Check out the red box here on the slide. This is the key part. So here we calculate the it's called the partial derivatives of the cost function g of theta with respect to each parameter theta 0, theta 1, and etc. Why? Because these derivatives tell us how to adjust each parameter to take the most effective step towards the minimum value. Think of it as a compass pointing us to the right direction at every step. Okay, let's do some calculation together. First, we will focus on the derivative term. To calculate it, we need to substitute the linear regression cost function into g of theta. In addition, we need to remember that the cost function includes the hypothesis function h of x. So when we expand the g of theta, it takes the form you see in the second equation on the slide. This gives us more detailed view of how the cost function depending on the theta. Next, we calculate the partial derivatives with respect to each theta. If you are a little rusty on the basic of linear algebra, no worries, feel free to Google it for a quick refresher. The concepts here just are as simple as they get, and you will pick them very quickly. After working through the math, you end up with the derivative formulas for theta of 0 and theta of 1, as shown into these two equations at the bottom of the slide. These equations are crucial because they guide how we update theta 0 and theta 1 during each step of gradient descent. Now, let's organize everything we have covered and put it into gradient descent formula for a linear regression model. This will give us clear step-by-step process. Here is how it works. So first, the iterative process stays the same. We keep repeating the steps until the parameter converge. And then the derivative terms we just calculate for theta 0 and theta 1 are plugged into the updated formulas. These are the two equations you see on the slide now. And later on, for each iteration, we update the values of theta 0 and theta 1. We still need a learning rate of alpha. And we use it to scale the value of the cost function's derivatives at each step. Here is something. I don't know if you already noticed, we are still following the same basic gradient descent formula we talked about earlier. The difference is that previously we only referred to the derivative as j of theta, but now since we are applying gradient descent to linear regression, we have to substitute the actual cost function into the formula and compute the specific derivatives. So in the end, for linear regression, this is how we updated the theta 0 and theta 1 at each iteration. The formulas on the slide lay it out just clearly. Before we move on, let me emphasize an important point. So when updating the parameters during each iteration, you must ensure simultaneously updates. If you are not sure what this means or need a refresher, I have explained it in details in the earlier videos on gradient descent. So don't worry, I will include a link to the in the description below so you can easily to check it out. Okay, now you might have some other questions, right? Because when we talk about the gradient descent, remember the graph we showed before, when the initial point or the starting point is different, gradient descent can converge to two completely different local like optimal points. This raises an interesting question for linear regression. Like, is it okay to stop to a local like optimum, or do we always need to aim for the global optimum? And if we do need a global optimum, how do we handle the fact that gradient descent is designed to stop at a local optimum, right? These are great questions, and I'm sure some of you might be curious about this too. So let's break it down and explore these ideas further in the next slide. So here, let's take a closer look at important properties of the linear regression cost function. For linear regressions, the cost function is a convex function. What does that mean? Essentially, it's shaped like a bow, like when we call a bow-shaped function. Now, here's why this matters. A convex function doesn't have multiple local optimal. Instead, it only have one and only one global like optimum. You can see this clearly just by looking at this shape. So when we apply gradient descent to linear regression, it will always eventually find the lowest point, and the lowest point is a global like mean optimal. Pretty neat, right? So with this understanding, the concerns from the previous slides about local versus the global optimal are no longer an issue. So now you might still like wondering, why is the cost function for linear regression always like convex? If you are curious, you can find the detailed proof online, usually involving the second order partial like derivatives to show this property mathematically. But honestly, like for most of us, it's enough for us to know this as a fact. So you don't need to dive into any like all the derivatives unless you're really into the math. Think of like this. So just like you accept that 1 plus 1 equals 2, right? Without needing to know the proof. So you can accept that linear regression cost function is convex without stressing about like why it works in that way. So with this fundamental knowledge, you now understand why gradient descent works so well for linear regression. It always finds the global optimal, right? And since we are already covered all the like how each parameters is updated during this process, you are all set. So let's move on and wrap up things up. As the last part of this video, I would like to introduce a term you might come across often in like learning materials, the batch gradient descent. So what does this mean? In batch gradient descent, during each like single iteration for the gradient descent, we use all the training examples to calculate the updated I would say updates for the parameters. Essentially, the entire data set is involved in every step. Now you might wonder, like, since we are specifically named this approach batch gradient descent, does that mean like there are other variants? Absolutely, but don't worry, we will cover those in details when we encounter situations where they are relevant. So for now, just remember that batch gradient descent refers to the version of the gradient descent where all training examples are used during each step. That's it. Okay, so here I would like to introduce you a little bit more on my YouTube channel membership. As we mentioned earlier, for the machine learning whole series, we're going to share some Q&A pairs on each topic, which will help you get a deeper understanding of machine learning itself and prepare for the interview questions. For all the Q&A pairs, we're going to list the videos under the YouTube channel membership. If you are interested in like these questions, please follow us step by step and join us as our membership. To join as our like membership, first please click our like channel name. You can find it under any of my videos. After clicking the channel name, you should be able to navigate to our main like channel page. From there, on the right side top, there's a join button. Click on the button and there will be a pop-up window. Please notice that we have different kinds of memberships. Only one is for English version. The other two are for like Chinese version. If you only want to see English version videos, please make sure you choose the one named as English. Once you choosing this category, on the right side of the pop-up window, you can click on the join button. After finish all the steps on the YouTube requires, you are officially one of our membership. Congratulations from there. If this is your very first time watching my videos, please do not hesitate to subscribe my channel and give me a thumb up. I will keep posting next videos for you and study with you together all the time. Okay, that's all my videos today. Thank you so much for watching and have a great day. See you in my next videos.